Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Hotel Dropouts. This week I am joined by no one, as this will be the third episode in a row that I've done alone since the boys were busy doing something else. In fact, we have an upcoming trip this afternoon to Croatia. So hopefully they're packing. I'm already packed. So I have a little time to bitch about the Online Safety Act in the UK. Oh my goodness, I've so much to bitch about. It's unnatural, it's unacceptable, and it's something that I didn't expect the UK would pass. And I've only come here this year in 2025, but apparently the bill started, it was passed in 2023. I'm kind of surprised how people let this happen. It's kind of insane. But apparently there's a very good reason that apparently that it had a good intention in the beginning. It very much so is the case of good intention but terrible execution. We'll get into that in a moment. But for now, I want to do a little update of my life. Bernard came back, I think it was last week. I had the opportunity to meet him as he came back to see his parents. Uh, uh, we took a little trip down south to Manchester, had some fun. It was a little embarrassing because we got to this library where so if you're from the UK, if you've been to Manchester, you'll know about this library where it's kind of like a tourist attraction, as well as a library. It's where you can get old books, and on in the library space itself, there are these tinted windows where famous philosophers, musicians, mathematicians, or famous leaders or whatever, they get painted. They all have their slot on these tinted window panes. And it was just embarrassing how many people, how many of these figures whose name I don't recognize. Uh, but alas, we had a decent time. I stayed behind, but Bernard had a terrible experience with the British railway system, which honestly is getting worse. I feel like ever since Theresa May, ever since all of these public services are privatized in the UK, it's just on a downward spiral. Like the how do you even save this country in terms of these, these public infrastructures? It's outrageous. In any case, I stayed behind. I stayed in one of the hotels near Manchester, and while I was in bed, I wanted to fall asleep faster because I had an early train to catch back to Durham the next day. So, as any man can relate, you turn to the internet. Uh, if to let off steam. Once you're done the deed, you can fall asleep relatively easily. Little did I know that I would run into the first day of the implementation of OSA, the Online Safety Act. I wanted to play a video and it asked for me to verify my age, and then shit went down from there. Oh my goodness, I was livid. So yeah, I guess let's jump into today's topic from that as a good segue. What OSA is and why you should care, even if you're not British, right? Um, as always, like and subscribe, all the good stuff. We're also on Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, we're on YouTube. I used to make an effort for the thumbnail, but for now, I think I'll just keep it all to the same. Uh, Primarily because I have a very slow PC now. So we have a Patreon if you want to help me out, but it's just an idea. Okay, the Online Safety Act. So this, like I said, was apparently passed back in 2023. So that was when Boris was that during Boris's government, or was it during Rishi Sunak? I'm not so sure, but it was introduced a long time ago, and I think perhaps a lot of people were blindsided by the implementation. So here's what happens when you get on websites where you want to look at, well, first of all, pornography is the primary target for this ban. You will have to verify your age. And oh, by the way, you get blocked out of sensitive content as well. So it could be political, it could be sexual in nature, it could also be controversial in nature. And this block can also occur on different social media sites. The age verification process is often delegated to these companies that I've never heard of. Maybe British people have heard of them, but I don't know where they come from. And then there's supposedly these trusted partners where you should hand them um, either your driver's license, your passport, or you take I don't think it's a screenshot of your face because you're asked to move your face a little bit. You need to like prove that you are a human being. You could also use, lo and behold, your credit card, where they authorize like a 0.1 so wait 1 pence transaction to verify that you were indeed an adult. They give you back the money, I think, and if you can't prove it, you cannot access the content. And the funniest thing was that I've heard was that a person who goes on Reddit has an NSFW profile because they're into the furry stuff, right? So they've got some really explicit content on their own Reddit page, and then this person was blocked out of his own Reddit profile, which is kind of funny. And but sadly, this feature is kind of rolling out on across different social media sites. YouTube is purportedly coming out with a feature that uses artificial intelligence to guess your age, in spite of what you may have put down when you're signing up for the account. So the algorithm guesses your age based on the content you watch. Then it decides whether it should block you out or not whenever you come across these sensitive, quote unquote, sensitive content, right? And that's just BS, right? When I was a kid, when I was 12, all I watched, did I have YouTube back when I was 12? Yes, we did. But all I watched was National Geographic clips and debates about homosexuality. I was a very mature kid. In fact, I didn't start consuming like brain rot content until now. I used to look at really interesting stuff, sometimes mathematical stuff like on like Veritasium or Vsauce. Oh, the good old days. Do you remember? Um, and based on that algorithm, based on that viewing history, how would you have guessed that I was in fact 12 years old? So I could imagine like a significant subset of kids that are just, could be academically inclined, or it could be that they're just not like any other kids, that you won't be able to detect that they are children. Um, or what if you have an account that is shared between the parent and the child, and maybe the child is 5 or 6 years old, likes to watch Lululemon, which, by the way, Lululemon itself should be banned. Okay, is that the name of I'm talking about that kid animation that is basically psychological morphine. Okay, it's drugs. That thing is the story. You can imagine a story is in the series of non sequiturs, and it blasts the kid's brain with so much colorful information, with music, with colors, with bright lights, that it is akin to psychological drugs. And you get kids get addicted to Lululemon. That is child content that should be banned, but it's legal, completely legal. Okay, and that fucking pisses me off, right? So what happens if you share the accounts with your kid? Do you then have to, as a parent, do you then have to constantly verify? And I haven't dealt with the system long enough, but if I remember correctly, I went from, because okay, when I look at online pornography, I bookmark them, okay? I jump from videos to videos. I have specific sections of the videos that I watch. So this this online safety act is incredibly toxic to me, because that's how I view these videos. Right, you jump between them, and then you feel like you're about to finish. Then you go back to your safety option. Right, there's always that one video that will get you off. But now with OSA, you can verify on, let's say, I don't know, one of the main sites, okay, the one that ends in hub, right? You verify your age there, right? You give them your personal information. You're like, oh, okay, I'm feeling close. I'm gonna move on to X videos or X hamster or whatever. Then you have to verify again, and I didn't mind handing my personal information over, despite the dangers of data breach, which we will get to. But for now, just know that because I'm an immigrant, I have had to submit all of my documents. I am compromised. Okay, I'm a millennial. I'm fully compromised. There's no point in protecting my privacy anymore. So I had just shaved that day and I have a baby face. So I I tried to verify and it didn't work. In the low light condition, it thought I was a kid, and I was pissed off, and I had to use my credit card, and then that didn't work because I had to. It does an authorization, right? So it charges you a very tiny amount of money. And then it'll give you back, sort of like when you check into a hotel. But my card is from a different country, so I need to receive an OTP, a one-time password to put it in. But my phone, but I left my Taiwanese SIM card back home, which means I couldn't get the OTP, which means I couldn't get the authorization done. And oh my goodness, it was just it was a series of unfortunate events. So I decided, you know what, let's peace out. I'm just gonna listen to something stupid, some Warhammer lore, and fall asleep to that. So that was a terrible night that I spent in Manchester, and that was the first time I came across the it feels almost draconian. You feel like this is something that will be implemented in parts of the world where personal liberty isn't all that readily available. You didn't think that this would happen in the UK, and yet it did. Okay, so what is OSA besides blocking you from pornography? It actually has a few branches. So the Safety Act itself gives the relevant Secretary of State the power to censor information that they deem to be harmful to children. The emphasis on they deem. Okay, it's up to them. And there are a few quote unquote duties, right? So think of it as the main pillars of this act. It First and foremost, it's about censoring content that's harmful to kids. Usually, they see that as pornography, and then they want to censor out illegal content. And then they have this last pillar, this last duties, um, for categorized services. So basically, it's them asking platforms like X, um like Reddit or like any of the social media platforms to comply and hand over information, or somehow work with them to come up with their own verification process. So I think a Meta is doing their own, um, and I believe X is also doing their own, because can you imagine asking these companies to hand over private information to you, the government that has a contract with these verification companies, notably YOTI, this company which I don't know where it came from, and Ofcom, and a series of other ones. And depending on the website you go to, there may be different companies. So you can imagine that is already a significant um, privacy risk, because you are potentially handing over information to all kinds of companies who why should you trust them, right? Even if these companies purport to do what they claim to do, which is be responsible and delete your personal information upon receiving them, there is still that very real risk of being doxxed or being hacked. We have just had this crazy data breach at a company that made the app called, I think, T. It's primarily used by women, and it's used by women that have horrible stories dating men across different dating websites, and then they share sort of these red flag stories about these particular users. that they had, well, bad encounters with, and so hence the title T. But that company was doxxed, so images were shared. Conversations were had. People talked about, oh, okay, this guy did this and that to me. This is a red flag. Blah blah blah. All that information is leaked out, right? So these are some very very personal information, very intimate information that can all get hacked. And why should I trust these companies to hold my information in safety when I know that there's no way of doing that, right? There's always a way to break in. There is always a way for you to be doxxed. There's just far too many vectors for an attack. So that in of itself is kind of bullshit. Um, Aside from the three main branches of this bill, three main duties of this bill, the British government also kind of came out to clarify on the government website on what exactly the act is doing. And I suppose I think this came out a few days after the bill went into effect, supposedly because of all the heat they were receiving. So the incumbent government, Keir Starmer's Labour Party, is I don't know if they're looking for for political suicide, like, or what. Like, this is a terrible move. This is not a good move at all. And we're seeing parties like the new Reform Party. Is it the Reform Party? I'm not that well versed in British politics. All I know is that Jeremy Corbyn and Sultana, the Corbyn Sultana coalition is gaining a lot of momentum amongst younger voters. Um, don't hate me for saying this, but here are my thoughts. Okay, I feel like the United Kingdom as a country has just been in such a long austerity, and so many things have already been ruined that it almost feels like it's too late to do anything about it. Nonetheless, I still aspire to a better future for the UK, because I have this weird attachment to this place. Like, it's almost as if the less the worse it gets, the more I want to be here. Um, right, so let's look at the UK government's explanation on what they mean by each of these duties. Right, so with the OSA Act, some criminal offences are also introduced. So this came into effect on the end of January in 2024, which is kind of surprising. Intimate image abuse. So if you, let's say, if you use deepfake or AI to generate a pornographic image of your classmate, which happened in the States, you should be liable. You should be held accountable. And I'm not sure if in the case of the UK that this only came into effect on January 31st, 2024, or is this a separate thing? I don't know. This is weird. Okay, so here are some of the criminal offences that could result in under the Online Safety Act: encouraging or assisting a serious self-harm. Right, that makes sense, except on one of our previous episodes, we talked about this AI chatbot that was it Persona or something? I forgot, but it was the kid who eventually took his life because his Khaleesi esque character chatbot that he was supposedly in love with told him "Good night, my sweet king" when he I don't know if threatened was the word, when he confessed that he was about to take his own life. The chatbot in a way implicitly encouraged him by saying "Good night, my sweet king." Isn't that encouraging or assisting in suicide? It should be, right? So what now? Are you going to ban AI chatbots? How do you regulate that? That's just right off the bat. We're already off to a terrible start. Cyber flashing. I have no idea what that is. What is cyber flash? How do you flash somebody? Okay, so it's like flashing, but over the camera. But then you could just look away. Confusing. Sending false information intended to cause non-trivial harm. How do you prove intent on this? Okay, you could potentially give somebody uh, an information that you believe to be true. So how do you prove that you intentionally sent it to cause non-trivial harm? Right, and I don't like the emphasis on non-trivial. Can you then send false information for light trolling? You're like, oh, I didn't think he was gonna do. I didn't think it was gonna jump off the building. I thought it was just gonna troll him. Does that exempt you from from this offense? Threatening communications, that I get. Intimate image abuse. Okay. So you can't send nude pics of people or around, which shouldn't that already be the case? And finally, epilepsy trolling. So it's a criminal offense epilepsy trolling. I have no clue what that is. Um, all right. So the government went on to explain that illegal content, they define it by child sexual abuse. Okay, I don't think anybody has any opposition to protecting kids from child abuse content. This is somebody can agree with. The problem is how much freedom we have to give up in order to quote unquote protect children. Okay, controlling or coercive behavior is now deemed illegal. Extremely sexual violence, extreme pornography, fraud. Now, this is an interesting one because I can already imagine boomers going on websites where they are just asked to verify their age. And unbeknownst to them, they stumbled onto a website outside of the UK that has nothing to do with violence, has nothing to do with pornography, that they just thought was part of using the internet now. And then they willingly give away their information because they thought, okay, well, that's the thing the government does, and government tells us to trust these companies, and thus trust is what I will do. Then they give away their information, then they get doxxed and identity stolen, blah blah blah. Oh my goodness, this is terrible. If anything, this encourages fraud, then prevents it. Racially or religiously aggravated public order offenses. Who decides on is what is a religiously aggravated public order offense? It's terrible. Inciting violence. Okay. Illegal immigration and people smuggling. So these video clips are censored? Wait, what about those video clips from BBC, CNN showing that these people travel to the UK on boats from France? Or is that gonna be age restricted now? Promoting or facilitating suicide. Fine. Intimate image abuse, again, selling illegal drugs or weapons, sexual exploitation, terrorism, makes sense. Okay. And by content that is harmful to children, the government explains the priority content that they deem harmful for kids or pornography, a content that encourages and promotes and provides instructions to either self-harm, eating disorder, or suicide. And like I said, like it sometimes a lot of kids have been driven to any of these terrible outcomes not because of a single cause, right? You don't look at, no kid looks at one single post on Instagram of just these gorgeous, ripped in best athletic shaped women, posting pictures of themselves in skimpy outfit, just showing off their body. No kid looks at one picture of that and decides to hurt themselves. Okay, it is a culmination of constantly being in that environment, a constant exposure to that sort of. Wait, by the way, is that cyber flashing? Are thirst traps cyber flashing now? But yeah, you get the point, right? Like this issue in of itself is very complicated because there's no single cause and it's something that accumulates over time. And let's not even mention that it's not as if parents couldn't do anything. It's not as if parents are helpless in this, right? There are things you can do to help guide your own children that you are supposed to raise. um, Okay, other priority content include bullying, abusive or harmful content, Content which depicts or encourages serious violence or injury. Content encourages dangerous stunts and challenges. No, really? What about those video clips on? What about those TikTokers that they go? What are they called? They scale, they climb all these crazy tall structures. You know, like they get onto cell the signal towers, and then they use these GoPro cameras with extreme field of view range, which makes you feel like you're really high up. Although, is that considered a dangerous stunt? Okay, content which encourages the ingestion, inhalation, or exposure to harmful substances. I like the language used here are often very vague and often up to, it's up to interpretation. And you can tell that they've written this in such a way that they could sort of meld into their own intentions, into their own purposes. Well, this is okay. By the way, this comes especially after. So the Secretary of State that is, I guess, quote unquote, in charge of this is a man by the name of Peter Kyle. If you don't know who Peter Kyle is, great. Let's keep it that way. This is your day is not going to get better by looking up his name. I guarantee you that. Um, but he, along with Keir Starmer, in the Labour Party, they're part of this group called Labour's for Israel (LFI), right? So they, at the core of their government, they have this staunch support for Israel, and supposedly they have. Of course, this involves the United States. And now we are hearing some news, or as of recording this video, we're hearing some news of a pivot to supporting Palestine. So then we already hear about content on Reddit where they show some of the atrocities that are happening in Gaza or Ukraine or wherever, being age restricted on Reddit. If you then now hard pivot to Israel, does the opposite happen? Like, do you see how many loopholes there are, and how nonsensical that these regulations are? And the government website basically goes on to explain how the act will tackle suicide, self-harm. And if you go online to look for, Ofcom or Yachty, you'll see that, oh my goodness, these companies are they are they're working hard. That's all I can say. They are um trying to promote their services to as many companies as possible, and you can tell that there is so much money in this. Or when platforms like X, like Meta, would be more willing to to come up with their own version of age verification services than to trust these companies. You can just tell they're up to no good with that, because they say that they'll delete the information when they can realistically sell these information for a lot of money by, associating your income bracket, by associating the bank that you use with the certain content you watch. These are information that you can monetize. And to say that, oh, just trust us, we're going to delete that doesn't make any sense. And you can already see the virtue signaling that the proponents of this bill are coming out. They're even gaslighting you. Peter Kyle famously said that if you disagree with the bill, you are on the side of child predators. It is as simple as that. Um, the the statement itself is infuriating, not because of what it, not because of what he literally said, but it's the blatant confidence in the way they said it, in the way that he said it, goes on to show you how little he thinks of the British public, how stupid he thinks that the British people are, by saying this, thinking that there will be some people that resonate with him. It's that observation that terrifies me. So if you go on Ofcom, right, you can see that they're posting things like, oh, these infographics. Women are 5 times more likely to be victims of intimate image abuse. Nearly 70% of all boys 11 to 14 have been exposed to online content that promotes misogyny and other harmful views. Almost a quarter of teenage girls, 23% in brackets, regularly see content that objectifies or demeans women. And it's these eye-catching sort of good one-liners that are supposed to get you to be outraged, where they sell you a solution to an imperfect solution, a band-aid solution, to solve, to quote unquote, not even really solve, to mitigate a problem that they themselves are very much complicit, right? Like, if you truly want to help with, if you really want, okay, for example, if you truly want to help with stopping the spread of misogynistic content, then maybe give young men hope, that they can grow up to work a wage that supports himself, that gets him a good living wage, that he can rent a place and be able to support himself, be able to see himself owning property. This goes on to all kids, right? Like, uh, the reason why we have these societal malaises, it's because of some much deeper problem that the government just doesn't seem to be interested in solving at all, and then they're selling you these these flashcard equivalents of band-aid solutions and expecting you to take the bait. Needless to say, people have already come up with ways to circumvent the Online Safety Act. Famously, people are using Norman Reedus from the second iteration of Death Stranding, which is, by the way, is kind of impressive because it's real time graphics, and then basically using the photo mode in the game, to trick the online, the face scanning verification process. Which, so I imagine, because some of the verification asks you to bob your head up and down, look left and right. I guess you could do that with Death Stranding in photo mode. Um, there are people getting around this by using AI generated licenses or passports, and it's just a variety of things. But most of all, people are using VPN to get around it. We saw a very significant rise in VPN use across the UK. This just makes it. Am I too much of a conspiracy theorist? Because I feel like they're all in cahoots with one another. That some of these VPN companies may have had prior knowledge of the enactment of the Online Safety Act, and thus have adjusted their marketing strategies to, to profit on this wave of purchase, which is a very significant wave. And apparently there are already some discussions about banning VPNs, and it's just, this goes into a an infinite loop of banning this, and then I'll use some other method to circumvent that. Then you'll need a VPN to circumvent the VPN ban. Oh my goodness, it's all gonna get really, really terrible. And we are already seeing that this trend is catching up everywhere. So, like I said, YouTube is coming up with a feature that guesses your age. We're seeing Australia already has this kind of, they've already banned kids under the age of 16 from social media, right? Um, we're seeing that if this works, it's just gonna start spreading all across the planet, because like I said, I feel like there's just so much money in this. Like, you could imagine all the information you could collect. Imagine that if you start taxing properly, you're gonna start infringing on people that got you into power in the first place. You have managed to squeeze out as much value as you can from the middle class, thus resulting in a world where ownership of anything is becoming far, far too difficult. So what else can you do? Right? Well, the currency of the new age is possibly just information. Are they doing this for money? I have no idea. It could be sheer incompetence. It could be lobbyist groups that have religious ties. It's impossible to know. But this is just idiotic. And me coming from Asia cannot, like, I'm genuinely scared. I'm genuinely scared. Can you imagine that if you do this kind of online safety act, this iteration of the online safety act in, I don't know, in Japan, you can no longer access point. You have to verify your age for pornography. There will be an open revolt. This is insane. I'm a little taken aback at how there are no riots happening here. I'm not inciting one. I don't think I do not support violence, but I was expecting a Parisian level of protest. Like, this is too much. It's crazy. It is crazy. And frankly, it is a little disappointing that the last time I was here, right? Theresa May had rolled out something to do with restricting the amount of time international students could stay behind. Uh, I I don't recall if there was anything akin to a search year visa, which is a visa schools issue to graduates, helping the idea is to help retain educated foreigners, young educated foreigners, retain them in the UK to join the workforce, and they'll stay behind with a search year visa for 1 year to 2 years, akin to those that you would find in France, Germany, and the Netherlands. When I was here, that was cancelled, I believe. When I was here, that was also when Brexit was voted. Was initially voted. I can't recall, but every time I came to the UK, something was taken away from the people. You know, like something terrible or always happens, and it's difficult to stay optimistic about this place. But I hope things turn for the best. I hope that people are starting to speak up, because this kind of draconian measure will start spreading like fire. And you know, this it a lot of people in my generation have never really lived in an era. It depends on where you were, where you were born, but a lot of us are not accustomed to not having personal freedoms. We're very pampered by that, and now that they're taken away from us, we really need to start waking up. Oh my goodness. Right. I hope I can just put this behind me when I get to Croatia, and I could hang out with Dan and Bernard just to forget about all this. But yeah, this is very real. Um all I can say is, if you have any any sexual needs, it is time to get on to the high seas. All right. Uh Yeehaw, matey. Wait, no, that's cowboy. Uh but yeah. All right, mateys. Have a good one, and I will see you next week. Goodbye, goodbye.